be able to tell us how it works and how it doesn't work.
Yeah, absolutely. So I do want to give a couple of little caveats before we get too far. I am not an instant replay operator by trade. So like I said, I'm mostly V1 or an EIC. I do dabble in instant replay, and when I do that, I mostly use vMix. I'm also not a video editor, and we'll see later why this panel is really designed for video editors more than instant replay operators, in my opinion. So I'm going to demonstrate some of the functions, how the process works, but I'm not going to be whizzing around on this thing like an EVS op because I don't have those skill sets at all. So,
hey, Aaron, for those people who don't know about the product at all, can you give us just a one paragraph kind of overview of what it's designed to do? Yep,
that's where I'm headed.
Great.
So at the core, the Blackmagic, the DaVinci Resolve Instant Replay system is essentially taking growing files that you're already making with recorders that you probably already own, such as a HyperDeck, one of the new models of HyperDeck, or the ATEM SDI Extreme ISO or HDMI Extreme ISO. So it is it's using those growing files and it's bringing those into DaVinci Resolve and essentially mixing those up and shooting them back into your video pipeline, into your switcher. At the core, that's really as simple as it is. It's utilizing the growing files that Blackmagic does on some of their recorders to a network share essentially to facilitate getting access to those recordings as they're made. I do have a demo running, and I just wanted to make sure I also mentioned that footage that I'm using is not copyrighted because it's stuff that I shot. Okay. So Blackmagic splits up the, sorry, one second here. Blackmagic splits up the, actually that's going to be really small, isn't it? Well, I can zoom in. So Blackmagic splits up their replay system design into what they call a large system and a small system. I'm just going to talk really briefly about the different components of each. So in the large replay system, they want you to, of course, use their cameras, but they want you to connect to a switcher and use inputs and outputs of the switcher. And specifically, that is because the Resolve replay system uses time code, not genlock, to facilitate making sure everything stays in sync.
And when you say switcher, you mean switcher or router? Oh, I guess this is the switcher, right? This is the 1M. This is the this is a 1U.
In this example, it's a 2ME constellation, and that's actually what I have running over here as well.
Got it. Okay.
But essentially, they just want you to burn 4 outputs specifically for the replay feeds because they want you to use the time code of the switcher to keep the sources in sync.
Yep.
And then again, in the big system, they want you to use HyperDecks. So this is any of the new HyperDeck HD models. So like I have the Studio Pro, but you can even use the Studio Mini HD. I'm sorry, I don't remember the exact terms, but you can even use like the half rack ones to get this done. And then they also want you to use for the large system, they want you to use Blackmagic Cloud Store. I've discovered you can use the Cloud Pod and almost certainly the Cloud Dock as well. But they advertise this as using the Cloud Store because the HyperDecks don't have network share capability built in. And so you could use like your own NAS, I think, but I've not tried that. But basically,
because you're not really playing off the HyperDecks are transferring their files as they grow to those Cloud Store.
That's correct. Yeah, I initially thought that you were pulling files out of the SSDs, but that's not the case with the HyperDecks.
Yep.
So you got to have a Cloud Store product. They also want you to use the yet to be released Media Player 10G or the Ultra Studio 4K Mini, which is what I have in my setup today. We'll talk a little bit later, depending on how much time we have, about whether or not that's actually necessary. But this is their recommended system design. This is how you get your media, your footage out of Resolve and back into your switcher is through the Media Player 10G or the Ultra Studio 4K Mini. And then last but not least, of course, we have Resolve itself. as an aside, I have not found any indication that having Studio helps with anything. It doesn't seem to pertain to replay.
So you can just use the free version of Resolve to do this replay.
That's correct.
Yeah, but you still have to buy the hardware.
Right.
Yeah.
And that is a great point, which is that as of now, and I assume it will be the case for some time, is that none of the replay-specific controls are accessible by any shortcuts, API, etc.
Right. So you're either using keystrokes or you're using, are there keystrokes? There's keystrokes, right?
Yes, there are some, but there are several features of the Resolve replay system that cannot be accessed at all without the panel itself. So I've got this replay panel here. This is the lovely Blackmagic replay panel, and things like speed ramping, for example. You can't do this without this panel in any way.
Right.
And then there are also several other buttons here that you can't access without the physical panel itself.
Hopefully Adam Tao is watching, because he'll figure it out.
I'm sure he'll figure out how to break it.
Yeah.
Some reverse engineering is coming.
And you need to have a HyperDeck of some sort to do this. You can't just record it to a drive connected to your Resolve system, or you can't record it to the internal drive of the computer that has Resolve on it. You need to have an external recording device. So
I think that leads me into a conversation about timing. So we'll talk a lot about timing, because timing really is at the core of this system, and the core of why I don't like it very much. But I think in theory you could, but the Resolve replay system uses NTP time code, like time of day time code, to keep everything in sync. And so you have to make sure that all your devices are on the same NTP server. And if your timing chip in one of your devices is not accurate, your replays will start to desync. So, for example, if you set a POI at 8:55 and 37 seconds, over the course of time, your replay may actually get put on your timeline at 32 seconds or something like that. So I for that reason, I don't think you could just push files into Resolve and expect it to work.
Well, but I mean, like you couldn't have, like, if you had the Ultra Studio, the Mini Ultra Studio, you couldn't just capture from it to an internal drive or a drive connected to the computer and then push it back out again. Like, just use it as a real basic replay. That you really need it sounds like you really need the external devices.
I think so. I'm not sure, but I think so. And so that's kind of a recap of the large system. Again, that's the system that you see at NAB with a bunch of HyperDecks and a big cloud store, and the replay panel, and either the yet to be released Media Player 10G or the Ultra Studio 4K Mini. There's a smaller system, and they literally call it the small system. Is based on an ATEM SDI Extreme ISO or an HDMI Extreme ISO. So this is much simpler, because the ATEM has that network share feature built in. So all you need for this system is a Mini Extreme ISO or an SDI Extreme ISO. You need a compatible SSD, and you need the replay panel. And depending on your, I scrolled too far. Depending on your preferred method of playout, you either do or do not need the Ultra Studio or the media player. So a lot of people have been asking and wondering, and have been frustrated to find out that Resolve Replay is not compatible with DeckLink cards. So you cannot push key and fill out of Resolve over a DeckLink. There is some, apparently Gary Adams has talked about it in the forums. Apparently there's some sort of special sauce that prevents it from working on DeckLinks. It will only work on these two products, and one of which is yet to be released. And I'll dive into this just really briefly. I think that that's actually not a huge problem, because, again, it only prevents you from doing key and fill over DeckLink. So this system is really designed.
Our knee jerk is that we would just want to use this to replay a play or replay something. Like, we're not trying to, boil the ocean. Like I think a lot of us would like to have longer things with longer things with key fill, but I think that's an entirely, like when I think about the replay system, I just think about people doing their high school sports or college sports, and they just want to be able to replay a play.
Right.
Like, or something like that. Replay one angle or multiple angles. It seems like once you get more serious than that, you're going to move into a real replay system.
Absolutely. I think that, so they have really designed the system to have, funny enough, to have the instant replay operator have full control of when instant replays are triggered. So the system kind of revolves a little bit around this feature called Auto Stinger, which, if you're using key and fill, allows the replay op to push a replay to program without any input from the technical director.
Right. And this is really, I think, this assuming a very small team that are all sitting next to each other.
Right.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is, if you have that small team and you want that feature, then you do need the Ultra Studio. If you just want to run a traditional sports broadcast replay workflow where the TD tees up the replay and then the replay op fires it when they're told to, and then the TD takes it, then you don't need those things, but you can just push it out, the key over the deck link. So that's a good way to save some money there. Another thing to think about too is how you get a multi-view into Resolve. So in the small system, that's done with the USB-C output of the ATEM. In the larger system, they want you to do that with the SDI input of your Ultra Studio. I will switch over real quick. So again, I've got a big demo running and I don't want to take too much time, but this is, I apologize. This is a system diagram of what I have set up today. And I've highlighted in blue the things that are critical to the system. A lot of the rest of this stuff is ancillary just so that I could do the demo. So what we have at the top here is the I can't make that blue because it's an image. This is the small system. So you've got a Mac Mini with Resolve is what I'm running. You've got the Ultra Studio, a monitor to be able to see what you're doing in Resolve. And then you've got your replay panel. And of course you need an SDI Extreme ISO or a Mini Extreme ISO. And then you need a compatible SSD. So those are really the core components of this system. And that's how they go together. This multi-view is not actually needed. So like you don't actually have to return an SDI multi-view. You can just take the USB-C multi-view out. And in fact, in the announcement video, Grant said that somehow the time code travels over this USB-C. So you actually have to use the USB-C. It's not like you can use this. You kind of have to use this. So I'm going to actually delete that out of there. This is the core components of a larger system. This is what I've got. Again, I've got set up today. We got the panel, a Mac Mini, Ultra Studio. These are all the same devices. And then we've got a Constellation 2ME. We've got the HyperDecks, and we've got a Cloud Pod, actually. So let me switch back over to here. I can do a quick demo of how to build replay. Or I can talk more about. Just
do a quick replay. I mean, I think we're running a little low on time. So,
Sure.
I mean, we can get you to jump into after hours and answer more questions for folks as
Absolutely.
well. Just quickly. So, just what does it look like when you're actually doing it inside of Resolve?
Yep. So we're right here. So this is I've started a new project. I haven't done anything other than hit the new project button. First thing you got to do is set your frame rate to the right frame rate. There's a bug that this does not work at 59.94. So I have to do 29.97, even though that's a weird frame rate for replay. So once you've set your project, I already have my IO set up, but I'm using the USB to come in, and I'm using the Ultra Studio to go out. And I've got my recordings already running on my SDI Extreme ISO, so I'm going to import media. And it will show me all these things, and you can see all the the demos. Let's see. I actually don't know which one of these is the most recent. I think it's got to be this one. So this is this is network sharing into the SSD that's on the SDI Extreme ISO. And so you'll see that these files are here. These are the recordings that are currently going. I'm going to go ahead and grab these and open. And I don't change. And I did it wrong because I didn't have replay turned on. So let me delete that. I apologize. I missed a step.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to do this again. You have to turn on replay first. Import media. And here are the files. And if we've done it right, we should see little red dots to indicate that they are growing files.
Okay.
Couple of other little things that have to be turned on, otherwise it gets crabby.
And those are, what are you turning on there? Just
there's just some little options here that they recommend that you turn on. Some of these are like AI enhancement style features, and some of them are. This is just a render cache.
Mm-hmm.
Last but not least, I'm going to pull in a stinger just to have.
And in addition to it being replay, you could theoretically start editing these growing files together in the editor.
I would contend, Alex, that that's the better use for this system than replay. If you look at this panel, I mean, I know we don't have a ton of time, but if you look at the panel, I would say at least 60% of these buttons, especially the ones on this side, are all editing buttons. This is really the Blackmagic Speed Editor with a few replay buttons added in.
Right.
So we'll go back to Resolve here. So once I've got my growing files added in, I'm going to select them, and then I'm going to hit this button called Multi-Source. And we're going to notice, maybe, if I do it right. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So I am going to do a little side-by-side so y'all can see what the hell I'm talking about. No, I'm not. Disregard. Okay. So I'm going to hit the multi-source button, and we're going to see that it doesn't instantly pop up all four of the feeds. Right. That is the growing file catch-up time. So right now it seems to be crabby. There we go. So I'll hit growing file, I'll hit go to end, and now it's going to go to as far along as it possibly can.
But you're not seeing them play back in the system.
I just hadn't hit play yet.
Okay, got it. Okay. So this is a live. This is, theoretically live, right?
Yes, sorry. So this is we are now actively watching the growing files. So you can hop over. There's another button on here called Input View. You can hop over, and this is the multi-viewer of the switcher that we're accessing these files through. But if you go to multi-source, now you go to end, and you hit play. We'll wait until they all populate in.
And then, and how do I replay one?
Yep, absolutely. So I'm going to do the most basic replay that I can. So once I see something that's interesting, so let's see. We'll wait for her. So that was not me doing anything. That's a glitch that it has. Okay, so I'm going to wait for her to do something interesting. Okay, so she raises her hands up. So I hit set POI. You'll notice in the right-hand corner of the screen over here, some little numbers popped up. I'm just going to grab my jog wheel, and I'm going to say, I want to see the last 15 seconds. So I jog back, and now this is going to be a 15-second replay to that POI. And I'm going to hit run, and I will show you in a minute, but it is now running a replay. And when it gets to POI or wherever I feel like it, I will hit dump, and we've run a replay.
And when you hit dump, it switches back to the switcher. It switches back whatever the live feed is in the switcher.
It actually comes back to the multi-source view, and you have to hit play again. And in fact, if you want to access the very, very end,
but I'm saying like for the live show, it switches back to when you hit dump, it dumps back to live, right?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. So it does whatever. Yeah. Okay. This has been great. This has been great for us to see. And you said it's a little. We can see it. It's a little first generation kind of thing. Like you got to start somewhere. So we had one quick question. We're gonna keep moving, but one quick question from Robert Green. Go ahead, Aaron or Alex.
Yeah, Robert is asking, can Resolve ingest growing clips from NDI, Zoom, or SR sources for playback?
It's really only, it comes in from the switcher, right? Like it can't take it any other way. It needs to be connected to the switcher, I think. Does that
the only evidence that I have of that is there have been people online that have tried to do this with their own NAS rather than with a cloud store, and it didn't work. So my guess is that there's some special sauce somewhere that they've put in to make sure that this only works with their hardware. I don't know for sure, but that's what would be my guess.
Okay. Aaron, thank you so much for jumping in. This is our experimentation of like kicking off a show with a little like, well, we were all the question keeps on coming up and no one had seen it, like how it actually works or what it actually does. It's really great for you to offer to jump in. I really appreciate you coming in.
Absolutely. I would, I'm going to plan to stick around for after hours because I have a bunch of stuff set up in my office and I'd really love to make some use of showing it to somebody.
Amazing. Thank you so much. So after the show, you'll be in after hours. So people are interested in asking more questions or talking to Aaron about it, jump into after hours right after the show. Let's go ahead and jump back in.
We're back to our next question.
Yes, and this one's from Mike Beardmore in Bedford, UK. What tools do you suggest to check a Cat 8 or lower connection is giving maximum performance?
Alex, she's going to help us out. Alex?
You can check continuity, of course. There's a wide variety of tools that will check the continuity of the cable. So that's the main thing that you can do there. Otherwise, to really check it to actually work, I don't know of a tool that will check it beyond certifying that. And I think Fluke. Let's see. Mickey said the Fluke DSX certifier is 100% no doubt. Just get one. So that's what. So so he said the certifiers. He said continuity is not testing capability. You want the certifier. So Fluke DSX certifier is what you should be using. There you go.
Next question.
From Matthew LeCount in Oakland, how can I send SRT to YouTube instead of RTMP? Flow as ATEM to LiveU to YouTube.
Alex is going to help us again. Alex.
SRT is only in a test process right now, so it's only available to a handful of folks that are testing it. We happen to be testing it right now, but YouTube's been kind enough to let us test it, but it's not general purpose yet.
Next question.
Marielle Jusha Mira from Wablo asking from the QR code, have you considered using the Zoom platform for Zoom as a service? Remember someone talking about this some months ago. Note how you have conceptualized the business model.
Alex, have you explored this?
I think that what we were discussing was the potential of, some of these things, some of these things are expensive. And so you start to buy into it. And the question is, some people don't need it all the time. So could they, just rent it from you? To do Zoom as a service, so they could run their Zoom meetings using all the features that the higher end version has, and they pay you for that. I think that that's technically against the terms of service with Zoom, so you can't just let them use your system. I believe that's a violation of the TOS. So if people have done it, I don't think you could make a business out of it as a result. Now, we do that in some cases because what we end up doing is we're doing productions for other people using our Zoom account. So in some ways, we're making our added features available to them, but we're not just having them just sign in and use our service. So I'm not 100% sure, but I believe that Zoom still frowns upon you buying one big license and then renting it out to other people. I think that's not in line with their terms of service.
Next question.
From the QR code, Gene J. Anthony in Skokie, Illinois, there are breakout ends for SMPTE tactical fiber that can provide power too. It's the same way there are breakouts for tactical fiber ends and SMPTE tactical cables can come with more than 2 channels. So why not use the cables made for production use?
Can you do power over optical, Alex?
You can do anything. You can package anything into a cable. So I think that. But if he's talking about the SMPTE fiber, the SMPTE fiber generally is designed to go to one camera. When we're doing it, and it's very specific to what we're doing. again, I think we talked about this yesterday. We have used SMPTE. We still use SMPTE fiber for a lot of these things. So it's not that we're always using just getting a TAC-12 and running it out there, but there's a lot of flexibility in being able to not only the SMPTE fiber is designed to work in a very specific way, and you're absolutely right. With the 950 that I have, if I plug SMPTE fiber in, that powers the camera. It sends comms back to the camera. It sends a return feedback to the camera. It gets a camera feedback to it. So there's a connection. The CCU becomes my truck end that does all those things. I plug all those things into it, and it gets all of it out to the camera. And it's the only thing that has to be plugged into the camera. It's very convenient. But there are a lot of other things that I may want to do. I may want to connect a network. I can put 4, even 8 full 1080p signals into a one piece of fiber, and theoretically I could probably put 4K signals in. I'm using different wavelengths. So there's, so I could have one strand of that TAC-12 could be 8 cameras. So those are a lot of different ways, and I'm not talking like 8 cameras NDI. I'm talking 8 cameras uncompressed. Could be going through, one of those pieces of glass, along with audio, along with other things. So running one cable out there, and what we typically do is not run one, but run 2 routes. So we have 2 routes of TAC-12 that come back to the same place, and they're able to carry a huge number of different things back and forth. So that's why we tend to use it a lot for those types of things. But for a straight-on, we're just using cameras and we're in a studio or sometimes in a stadium or whatever, we're absolutely using SMPTE for the cameras. So it just depends on what we're using it for.
And that bundles some kind of copper to get the power down the line along with the optical, because you can't really send power over optical.
The SMPTE cable carries a lot. I have one in my garage. I'll try to bring it out for the next time this question comes up.
Is it really thick or is it relatively small?
It's thick,
yeah. So it's like old triax or something.
It's not huge, but it's close to a triax. It's a pretty thick cable. It's a 1/4 inch thick or whatever, or more, to carry all that with it.
Yeah, that was the day I learned figure 8 wraps, because the cable was so heavy you can't do any of the standard.
It's not big. It's not that thick. I mean, we can definitely go over under with it, but it's we don't have to figure 8 it, but it's still thicker than what you would think of as a small fiber cable.
Fair enough. Next question.
John Foltz in Selinsgrove, Pennsylvania is asking, a friend wants to put a camera over his billiard table to improve his play. I thought an NDI camera overhead, then stream to YouTube. This is a low-budget project. Any suggestions?
Alexander Knight, what do you think?
Well, I don't know how low is low for your budget, but if it's super, super bare bones, if you already have an iPhone, which will have a very good camera on it, you can use an app like Shoot from the App Store, which does support NDI out. Of course, this is going to go over Wi-Fi, but I believe you can get USB-C to Ethernet adapters if you want to just hardwire it in to ensure that you get the most stable connection. I would highly test that. But yeah, if your budget is next to nothing, use what you already have and see how it goes. Alex?
Yeah, you may want to think about a PTZ camera, whether it's NDI or even, excuse me, or a web camera. Like the Link 360, you could program the Link 360 for every hole, and so that would allow you to, like if a ball is going really slow, you could zoom in on that hole as it goes through. So a PTZ camera, like again, a little Link 360 might be something that you hang it upside down. The only problem with that is that the Link 360 will only go, a USB will only go about 10 feet. So you'd have to figure out where to put the computer to make that happen. But that could be another option.
It's the words "improve his play" kind of stop me though, because that seems like you're almost doing sports analysis there, which would be a record now and playback later. Well, no, I think that what you're looking at is the issue that you have with, I'm guessing the issue that he's having with billiards is the angle in which you hit the cue ball and how it propagates back to the balls. So you're trying to hit, let's say the 15 or the 12 or whatever, and it's the angle that your stick is in. So if you have a direct above it, and what you want to think about also is you don't want to be super wide angle. You want to get it up a little bit higher so that you get a nice kind of flat orthographic shot. Mm-hmm. And then what you're able to do is look at the angle. This is what I'm guessing when he says improve his play. He wants to look at the angle in which he hit the cue ball with the stick, which you'd be able to see very clearly with an overhead shot, and then be able to see where did the ball go and did it hit correctly? What did it and analyze like what part of that ball hit the ball that it was the target ball. So my guess is that's what he's trying to do with that.
Well, John Foltz, tell us what, if you set this up and work on it, ping into us and let us know how things are working and whether you're getting the results you're looking for. Let's go to the next question.
This one's from the QR code. Francis Fry in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Is there a single converter that can take an HDMI from an FX3 and send a USB to a Mac and an SDI to a HyperDeck? I currently have a capture card, HDMI to USB, and loop HDMI, and a BMD mini converter, HDMI to SDI.
Alex, what do you think?
I don't think so. I think that you would. I mean, Mickey says that he's a big fan of the AJA UTAP. It's very reliable, high quality box. But I don't think that you can send USB to the Mac. I'm trying to think of a single converter. I mean, you could theoretically have something like a HyperDeck, not a HyperDeck, but the Ultra Studio might be able to capture it, and then loop it might be able to capture it via Thunderbolt, and then what's coming in have it loop out as an SDI. I'm not 100% sure if that would work. Also, the newer Terranexes may be able to. I mean, I'm talking about the bigger Terranex. I think it has a USB now that's available to it, so it could convert to in and out of anything. But I don't know if you're looking for something small or something that is, larger. I mean, typically what we would do with an FX3 or an FX30 or whatever is immediately as it comes out of there, convert it to SDI, and then from whatever we're going to do with it later, we're going to make it SDI after that. So I would typically convert it at the camera to SDI and then call it a day. Like HDMI I use it for my home stuff, but I try to avoid using it. And we've used it for cameras, and we've got Blackmagic 6Ks that we've used, but generally we convert those at the camera, within a foot, they're converted to SDI. And then from then on, they're just an SDI signal. If you really want to, obviously the next step up from this is the FX6, that will look the same, except it'll have all those things for you that are there. But I think that I think if you want to do the FX3, what I would do is I would, again, put the converter right at the camera, convert it to SDI, and then send it out to wherever you need to go. You're going to find that that's a lot easier to deal with anyway. You don't want to have HDMI running around on your set more than 6 feet.
And Mickey addressed some of this in the Q&A as well, including ending with stop investing in HDMI and starting investing in SDI. You'll want and need to move to SDI eventually. And James Haldane say the Magewell USB capture does this as well, so you have some options.
But I think, so Mickey said the BMD HDMI to SDI converter already has 2 SDI outputs. Yeah, which is true. That's what we use, actually. Although we typically we're using the bidirectional ones because we need to use we're controlling cameras with them. But I would say I think that Francis still needs to convert to USB, so that SDI would then still have another box somewhere that it's getting digitized. But it would be much easier to deal with if you just convert it to SDI right out of the camera.
Mm-hmm. That seems to be the consensus in the chat. Next question.
From the QR code, Rick Combs in Columbia, Tennessee. I have enabled the closed captions option on our YouTube studio page. It does not work. I wonder if that's because we use Restream to broadcast instead of starting the stream directly from YouTube. Thoughts?
Can you help them troubleshoot, Alex?
Yeah, it depends on what you're doing with closed captions. So the closed captions that is automatic, it's kind of hit and miss. Like YouTube sometimes will produce closed captions from your show much later on. If you're looking for closed captions live, you have 2 options with YouTube. One is there is the embedded closed captioning that's happening, and that's either going to be generated by AI Media's cloud infrastructure or an EEG, typically. I mean, that's going to embed it on line 21 inside of your now, if you're doing it with an EEG like a 491 or 492, it's going to embed that into the bank data and send it out when it goes into your encoder will know what to do with it, and it will send it to YouTube with that closed captioning data. But that closed captioning has to be added somewhere if you're doing it live. And then if you are sending it to, the other option is AI Media has something that you can send from Restream as I remember it. It's been a couple of years since I've done this for this specific way. But from Restream to AI media, and then from AI media to YouTube, and it's inserting that data or it's sending that data to YouTube from that system. The other way to do it is, I believe that YouTube still, we haven't done it for a long time this way, but does it HTTP input, which is something from like stream text or something that can point towards YouTube and send it in completely separately. And I don't know if they still support that or not, but that's another way to do it. But somebody live is creating it if you want it to be reliably a closed caption. Now that can be done with, again, a person typing, or it can be done, AI. There's ICAP has they have a solution, AEG, and they have a solution to do auto caption. AI Media also, who merged with EEG, also has a way to do it automatically. But there's a service that does it. I think YouTube on some of the larger channels does have a system that will do it live, but it's definitely not something that's general purpose and happens all the time. If you really want to have closed captioning, you got to create it.
100% agree with that. Closed captioning has been the most annoying thing to me in watching content on YouTube lately, because most of the time it's auto on when I go to something, and most of the time there is just so much minor problems, and I'm so conditioned to assessing graphics and what's on my screen that I keep ending up listening, watching sometimes one closed caption plus the auto-generated closed caption. I'm constantly comparing them, and I'm finding myself pulled out of the content more times than I can tell people.
It's really hard.
Drives me crazy.
Yeah, closed captioning is really hard. Like it is. And I've worked on some pretty large events where I'm quote unquote the caption captain, which means that my job is to manage all these captions and stuff for very large events. And it is, we joke that it's when we do it, it's 1% of the audience and 99% of the work of a live event is the closed captioning, because it's not that many people watching it, or back in the day. Now everyone watches it. But back in the day, it was like not very many people. There were definitely people that needed it, and so we were doing it for them. But it wasn't a huge percentage of our viewership, but it was an enormous amount of work. Trying to keep closed captioning flowing through the system to make it work is really hard. And then no matter what you do, you don't get it right. If you have interpreters, if you have closed captioners, if you have all these things, no one's all going to agree. Like when we have interpreters, and this is not even closed captioning, we'll have interpreters that are, putting in an audio track for German and French and everything else, and we have to warn our clients. People are going to call. They're going to tell you how horrible it is. And the one country that that you're in for it is France. The French will get really upset about every word that you don't get right. The Germans are just happy to be included. The Spanish are used to it, like Spanish speaking, but the French are just really upset. They'd rather you not do any than to screw up their language. And but we have this problem, and the problem is that, people, even what I'm amazed at is when there's subtitles that were put in by the studio that are obviously wrong. Like you're just kind of like, when you're watching, because I live in a family that leaves subtitling on all the time, and so we see it constantly because my wife and my daughter insist on having it on all the time, and so we see it all the time, and so it's kind of a constant flow of inaccuracies. So I
just watched something the other night, and every time it was a tech conversation, every time it was supposed to be HDI, it ended up with him. So I ended up with all these sentences going, that doesn't make any sense. That doesn't make any sense. It just completely destroyed
but it's hard.
Followability.
It's really, really hard. It's so it doesn't work perfectly, but it's super hard.
Next question.
This one's from the QR code. Marielle Jusha Miera and Wablo is asking, looking to upgrade my internet hardware for Zoom, YouTube streaming. Currently on Xfinity using a Netgear CM1000 cable modem connected to an Apple Airport Extreme base station. No finances here, committee to consider.
Alexander, did you have some suggestions?
Yeah, the first thing I would recommend is, now I don't know what your budget is, but if you don't want to go too crazy like me, what I ended up doing was, the first thing you're going to want to do is disable or put your ISP provided cable modem into bridge mode, which disables the routing. It basically just becomes a modem at that point. So it's not actually doing any firewall or NAT routing or anything like that. I ended up going with a Ubiquiti Edge router, which is pretty reasonable as far as the price is concerned, and it gives you a lot more flexibility in terms of the kind of professional features you would expect a router to have, like being able to create VLANs. So if you want to experiment with NDI or Dante audio and you want the VLAN support, I would look at the Ubiquiti stuff. Also, I would seriously consider replacing that Airport Extreme. That thing is far past its prime. I would recommend the Ubiquiti Unify access point. It is a lot faster. It supports the newer 802.11 standards. I think it supports Wi-Fi 6. So you will get also a lot faster speeds with a newer access point.
Hasmuk. Oops, we're not hearing you.
No.
I'm sorry. Okay, next question. I'm sorry.
From the QR code, Francis Fry in Cambridge, Massachusetts. What is different about inputs 1 and 2 on the ATEM Mini Extreme ISO? Should certain types of inputs be avoided on those channels?
Alexander again.
I have an ATEM Mini Extreme ISO. According to the manual, channel 1 or input 1 on that is a bit of a special channel because in the Extreme control panel software, there's a setting for your frame rate. You can manually set frame rates. If you set it to auto, whatever you plug into that first input will determine the frame rates for the rest of the channels. The other thing, and I don't see anything in the documentation, maybe I missed it, but I know there are issues with color space, and I think it only does RGB because the first time I remember I got the ATEM, I plugged my camera into input 1 and it just looked totally off. So I only use input 1 for piping in a computer, whether that's a Mac or a PC. My camera is actually on channel 2. You're saying it's both inputs 1 and 2. I've never had a problem with HDMI 2 on an Extreme ISO.
Hasmuk Gajar.
Yeah, in the early days of office hours, I think mention was made of input 1 being for gamers or for gaming. So I don't use it either, just traditional. And I use 2 as Alex does for camera. But in an event, the cardiologist wanted to show off his iPad. So we had the iPad into input 1. And touch wood, we didn't have any problems with it.
Alex Lindsay.
Yeah, and Mickey said that sync reference and automatic frame rate is taken from input 1. Input 1 supports both RGB and YUV, while the other inputs only support YUV. So it really is the gaming input, the low latency gaming input that's there for gamers. That's what it's designed for.
I will note that my Blackmagic 6P has been hooked into input 1, and it's worked flawlessly for these 4 years. So it's not that it doesn't work. And if you're not having a problem, congratulations, you're full of luck, as I am. But we've been talking about this since the early days.
I will say that I'm now using my input 1 is now my main camera. So I do use it for that. It was on the camera 2 for many, many years. And I think that there was an update that solved. We had some serious issues with input 1 when the ATEM first came out. For probably the first 2 years, there was something wrong with it. Like it was causing issues. But we have not seen that problem for a while now.
Yeah. Next question.
This one's from Russell K. in Brooklyn, Maine. Audio for a wildlife doc. We have the chance to wire up a bird's nest ahead of it being used. From mating calls to raising chicks, I'm looking for innovative ideas for the sound design and weatherproofing. Deployment will be 12 weeks.
Ooh, long-term project here. Alex, what do you think?
Yeah, there are wildlife cameras that have streaming capabilities on them. You may want to think about one of those and then have something that's going to receive it. They're really designed for this. Like they're designed to be sitting outside for a long time and be rained on for a long time. Now we've done higher end ones, but what we've done is built cases for them, and it, depending on where you live. I mean, you're living in Maine. There's going to be a lot of there's going to be weather, and so you're talking about, really I would look at wildlife cameras for 12 weeks. We have used, not for that long, for a couple weeks, we've used Blackmagic Micro Studios inside of hard cases, but we have not had to deal with freezing weather and lots of other things that would have happened there. And then the invariable problem is that the glass gets dirty, and so that's been the biggest problem that we've had is glass.
I have a friend in the Pacific Northwest who's done this for years. He always has birds come into his birdhouse and nest there almost every season, and he live streams it over the course of those months. He opted not to use the audio thing because, as he said, it's outside. Even though it's relatively covered, if there's a lot of wind, you can get whistling and all sorts of sound that, for people who just want to go onto the stream all the time and watch it, he preferred to have it just be silent and let them watch it. But your mileage may vary, and if you find a way to do audio from inside a live outdoor thing like that and it works, come back and let us know what you managed to do to get success out of it. Next question.
Wayne Fox in Sydney, has anyone been able to take advantage of DataColor SpiderX Pro upgrade offer, US $100 off on SpiderX 2 Ultra or Elite expires January 6, 2025, only shipping to Asia, Pacific, Australia, and New Zealand?
Alex.
You know, I have a SpiderX Pro, and it works great, and I use it for what I need it for. The next step up from this is really using, I mean, I don't feel like there's anything it could do that would make it better than what it is for what I paid for. The next step up is using a true monitor, like a Blackmagic monitor converter with a probe, which is going to be a lot more expensive. But I wouldn't go any higher than what I have. I would just go all the way to a proper probe to color manage a monitor.
And don't forget, every day we do this main show, but there are also other shows around. Extra Hours on Monday. The Conversation with Tony Mobley comes up on Wednesdays. The Rundown with David Paskin happens Thursday, which means that after this show is over, you can get another dose of office hours by tuning into that. You will hear more about these other shows as we go along. Also, a quick note, don't forget that your questions drive the show every day. And if this happens to be the first time you're watching for some reason, you can use the QR code that comes up on the screen at various times. And also just go to askofficehours.global to put your questions in. They are what drive the run of show every day. Let's get to our next question.
This one's from Douglas Carmichael. For those who have M4 MacBook Pros or iPads with the nano-texture glass, how do you handle keeping the screen clean considering the requirement for the Apple cloth? Do you keep an Apple cloth in each bag you travel with?
Alex Lindsay.
I don't have the nano-texture because I'm afraid of this exact problem. You know, so the idea of managing a nano-textured glass is something that I'm not interested in doing. And so I haven't bought anything with that or anything with a texture to it for a very long time because we used to have to deal with some of this in past screens, and I decided I didn't want to deal with it.
Alexander Knight.
I wonder if anyone's talked about this because I really want to get my hands on this cloth because I'm very suspect on how actually different it is from a regular microfiber cloth because a good high quality cloth shouldn't damage any skin.
I know, but there's a lot of things that call themselves microfiber that are not. Like they're not high quality. So I think that all they're saying is, look, we know this one works. It doesn't mean that you probably couldn't it doesn't mean that you probably couldn't use something else. It's just that there are so many things. It's like USB-C. You know, there's so many versions of the cloth, and some of them are really not good for your screen, and some of them are great for your screen. I think all Apple's saying is, we know ours works.
And there's solutions that also will damage coating on things like lenses. So the whole idea of cleaning glass has been kind of one thing up until Apple got into making their glass science. And boy, they seem to have been, based on the Steve Jobs years, really interested in learning a lot about glass surfaces and how to manage them. And one of the products that now that's resulted in is this nano-coated glass. I think it's still a very niche product. If you're going to be using one of these new screens with the nano-textured glass, I would think that you're going to follow the rules exactly because it's designed to do something that's very hard to do, which is eliminate as many reflections as possible from as many angles of incidence and angles to reflection. That's really good when you're teleprompting somebody in the field and you don't have massive control over highlights and things like that might preclude somebody from being able to see it. But I suspect the science of creating this glass they have managed very carefully, and that means they thought it worthwhile to put together a system, including the cloth, to make sure that that stays undamaged over the course of its life. So we'll be hearing a lot more as these things get out there in the field and people end up using them. And I agree that this is a place to if you're going to spend that much money on a monitor, or on a reflective piece of glass, a teleprompter kind of environment, or a monitor, you're going to want to take really good care of it. These are really expensive. Next question.
From the QR code, Francis Fry in Cambridge, Massachusetts, the recently released HyperDeck 8.5 update states that the HyperDeck Extreme 8K can now record 4 separate inputs. Given that it also accepts XLR inputs, does this sound like it can record several cameras with audio from a Rodecaster Pro?
Alex, what do you think?
Yeah, it should. It should be able to capture 4 cameras remember that the XLR will just be whatever comes out of the Rodecaster Pro. I think that no matter what you're capturing here, it'll capture just 2 channels of audio out of it, I believe. I don't know. I don't have an 8K, but I think it's 2 channels in, so that's what you would be getting there. I do think that looking at all the other hardware that you've put together and based on questions, I think that you're probably outgrowing the Rodecaster Pro. So I think that you're going to probably need to be thinking about something larger and more, to match the other hardware and the kind of routing that you're trying to do.
Let's go to our next question.
Douglas Carmichael's asking, I've been experimenting with the raw Claude API, and the output can be a lot different in style than the web interface, claude.ai. Why could this be?
Alex, have you thought about that?
One or the other is probably moving much faster than the other one as far as feature sets and how it manages things, and so they're probably not lockstep together, and that's probably why you're getting different things. We see this with ChatGPT. If you're using the app versus the web interface, they're definitely not. It's not wildly different, but we definitely are getting different results. And you have to remember that every time you ask an AI a question, the answer will be slightly different. Like it's not going to be. It never answers the same question the same way twice.
Next question.
Russell K. in Brooklyn, Maine, Wildlife Doc, Blackmagic Microstudio 4K G2 1K versus Canon PTZ CR-X500 22K. Any experiences? Thoughts on deploying Micro G2 in a waterproof housing, $750 versus weatherproof Canon PTZ. Deployment is watching a bird nest for 12 weeks.
Alex, what do you think?
Yeah, the weatherproof, the Canon PTZs are pretty effective, and they're really built for this. Again, as I said before, we put Microstudios into waterproof housings. The problem that we've really had with that has only been that the glass in the front gets dirty, and then someone has to go out there and clean it. And we haven't done it with birds. We've done it with some other things that are long term. I think you're going to have potentially the same problem, but the Canon PTZ is designed. You're going to have a PTZ function instead of just a single pointed function. So that may be something that's important to you. But again, the thing that we really run into the most is, figuring out how you're going to cover that glass. And sometimes you can give it a cover that sticks out pretty far. We had one where we had a spider build a web in front of our camera, and it was in a place that we couldn't get to. So after about 2 weeks, all we saw was out of focus spider webs.
Change the documentary to spiders.
I'm just telling you. After these long term ones, if you really can't get to them, sometimes they work great. We see streams of eagle nests and everything else that work great, but oftentimes you end up with something that just kind of goes sideways, and there's nothing you can really do about it.
Yeah, I will say, from talking to Bill Farnsworth, my friend in Seattle, who's done this bird's nest thing for a long time, you have setup time, and then in the first period of gestation of the eggs before they hatch, there's nothing much happening except the birds coming in to kind of sit on them. And it's really relatively boring, but then you get the highlight of everything, right? The shells start cracking, the birds start hatching. And that is a wholly different shot. And I would think there you want to get in as close as possible on those eggs as they go through that process of the birds emerging. So I would think if I had a chance to do it, I would do a relatively wide camera of the whole nest area. Then I'd also do 1 or 2 mini cameras if I could that have the ability to pan and tilt and push in. If you really are doing a wildlife doc, your shots are going to tell this story, and you want to set up to get the best you can. You won't be doing much the first 2/3 of the process, and then everything happens when the small birds hatch and then they're leaving the nest, and that's kind of the end of your story. So my 2 cents worth in how I think about it. Next question.
All Vahus in Austin, Texas. What are some of the best YouTube instructional videos to learn to become a professional photographer / videographer using a top-end Android or iPhone in production?
Alex Lindsay.
You're not going to be able to watch a YouTube channel and become a top end. There's a lot of good people. Watch a lot of videos, and absorb some of that information. But the way to become a professional is to be around professionals and to do it a lot. And there's not going to be, an asking lots of questions as you work. But the main thing is I don't know of anybody that's doing incredible YouTube videos about Android or iPhone. There are some people out there that are doing some. But I think that the best thing to do is you got to go out and shoot a lot. Shoot a lot, try to find other people that are doing it. And then the videos will make more sense too. I mean, that's the big thing. I'm shooting every day using multiple features on mine all the time, constantly trying to absorb what the camera can and can't do.
Amen to that. I mean, there's nothing like actually doing it. I will say some of the old traditional news groups that are assembled on Facebook and other places where they have a community. I've been paying attention to iPhone cinematography. It's one of the ones, one of the old Facebook news groups, been around for a while. There are also, Reddit has communities. Those discussion communities can be really good. They tend to focus on hardware as opposed to the aesthetics of shooting, which is one thing to watch out for. But, maybe that's fascinating to you too. I just like discussion groups where you can pose questions and everybody can weigh in, because that's where I still learn a good little bit, see what everybody else is doing. Next question.
Archie Trivedi in Daytona Beach, Florida is asking, if you want to get into Blackmagic, Ultra Studios said this one wise man who shared with me a while back, a Mini, I suppose. Would this be still true, or Aja or Magewell?
Alex?
Harshit, can you explain what you're trying to do there?
So with the black that we were talking about earlier with Aaron earlier, so do you get the Ultra Studio or do you get Magewell or
I think in this case, I think that you need to get the Ultra Studio because you need to get the time code. So for that to work, I think you can't do it with the other ones because you need the time code.
Got it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And another question.
Henry Ramos in Yonkers, New York. Is there any way to get HDMI input to an iPad with Lightning connector?
Alex?
No. not only can you not get an HDMI input into it, I don't think you can get one into even with the USB-C. No, I think you can. So the phone USB-C you can't get it in. USB-C you can get it in. Lightning you cannot. There is an ASUN or Axon has something that does Lightning in, and it does kind of this basic stream. So there is a way to do it. The Axon will do it to the phone, and it'll do it to the iPad. It's not. It's a kind of a wonky, connection system, but it can work.
Yeah, Guy Cochran in the chat said yes. Axon's SEMO, SEEMO, will do that perhaps. So give that a shot. Let's see if we can get one more in. Question-wise.
Yeah, and this last one is coming from Douglas Carmichael. Alex, it's interesting that AI is used for captioning. Is it standard speech recognition, or is there a large language model involved? I'm not familiar with it, but I'd be concerned about hallucinations.
Alex?
Actually, a lot of the AI-based, it's language, and AI does language. It's not answering questions. We have found that some of the newer AI models, the whisper-based models, are incredibly accurate, way more accurate than most people are, especially in the speeds at which they do them in. And so we, it may hallucinate, but people are wrong all the time. Just open up your closed captions on your TV and see how often a person is inaccurate doing it. So, we have to be careful of worrying about being 99 or 100% accurate. Generally, we're at 96 to 98% accurate, and the new AI models are definitely nailing that.
Jesse Kester.
Yeah, exactly. If you have word-by-word anchoring, you're just reducing the chances of hallucination incredibly. And if you're working within a large language model, you're getting the benefit of an understanding of the context, not just the word-by-word analysis. So an example of that would be like, look at the cars stop at that line. If you're understanding the full sentence, you would know it as the cars stop at that line. If you're not doing the full sentence, it could be transcribed as look at the cars top at that line. So you're actually reducing errors by working in a large language model instead of just a word-by-word sonic analysis.
And don't forget, if you like what you witnessed and or listened to today, you can help us out by doing a donation. officehours.global/donate will get you there. We would appreciate any help you can give us as we continue to evolve this model. And we want to say our huge thank yous to the three constituencies that make up this group every single day that kind of get together here. First and foremost, our producers. That's all of you who ask questions and put them into the queue today or yesterday or whenever you got a chance to do that, either using the QR code or putting them in directly into the Mukana system. Your questions are what drive this show, so we appreciate your helping us make this possible. To our panelists who show up every day and donate their time, volunteer, an amazing brain trust of people all over the world. Good example today from Norway and South Africa and Canada and beyond. The number of people who have participated in this show over the course of our 4+ years, getting on to 5 years now, has been really impressive, and so many wonderful people have contributed, and it's been a privilege to call some of them my friends now. So thank you all to everybody who's been a panelist. And finally, and definitely not least, there's a quiet, silent, amazingly talented army of people in our back-end crew who wake up every single morning and make this show happen. We truly appreciate what each and every one of you do, whether they're live or whether they're working behind the scenes on the 100 tasks that are required to get this show mounted every year. Some of them work during the show, but a lot of them work around. They donate their 24/7 to do things like the infrastructure and making sure everything on the back end functions. And we couldn't do this without them too. So thank all of them for your efforts. To Lock Traversal today, we have traveled 31,000 miles. That's 50,000 kilometers or 246 million bananas for scale. Don't forget After Hours. Aaron Kothe will be there today. Thanks for watching.
Go jumping off to another meeting.
Good to see you, Hasmik. Good to see you, Ronnie. Good to see you, everybody.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Good.